Hey everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today we're going to talk about the iFi Diablo 2, a $1,300 portable DAC amp that's designed to work from IEMs all the way up into hard-to-drive headphones. One of the major selling points of this was the extreme power output because they listed over 5 watts at 32 ohms online. That peak power was kind of derived from a non-standard process of basically measuring a burst at 1 millisecond as opposed to 20. I just cover all that because it's very unrealistic that you would ever hear 5 watts of actual power at 32 ohms. It is still exceptionally powerful though, and just shout out to Golden Sound who covered this in the past, and I'm friends with the guy. I've been talking with him for several years now. He has a pretty good article or video, I guess, posted on YouTube. I'll have a link in the description below if you want to learn more. I can't create a dummy load and do in-depth testing on the actual power output. I can basically just use it and then subjectively hear the difference in volume, gain settings, distortion, talk about all the other stuff that I can observe and validate. So shout out to him for catching that. iFi did add actual RMS power online, and there is a difference between balanced and unbalanced. So all of that info is there. We're going to just get past that point because I want to talk about what's included, how this performs, and why you would or would not want to use this. To be fully transparent, this was sent to me for review by iFi directly. I have no monetary exchange. I have no special affiliate links or kickbacks in the description below, just standard purchase links, and I will be sending this back after the review. I get no monetary gain by doing this. I just wanted to cover it because it's an interesting product, especially given the price range, so it better do some pretty unique things. As far as what's included, it actually comes with quite a bit, so I'm not going to get into too much of this, but the power supply, they kind of advertise as a higher performance power supply, basically doing some scaling and filtering to make sure that you don't have as much power noise. I've never really had issues with power supplies creating noise on my products. It's usually a byproduct of the electricity that you're running it off of, so maybe my room is less sensitive to a higher performance adapter like this. I wasn't able to hear any observable difference. Now, it comes with a barrel connector because normally this is used on other iFi products as well. In fact, when it plugs in, you have this little faint red glow inside. So you have a standard barrel connector, and then it comes with this wire to step it down to USB-C because one of the 2 ports is solely for charging it and keeping it powered. It will always charge the battery to 100% before switching over solely off the power supply, so just keep that in mind. There's no way to extend the battery life by locking the charge, at least at the time of this review, to a lower charge state before running off of this exclusively. You also get several USB cables in the box. You have a USB-C to C, which is rather straightforward. You know, it's all black, it's rubber, and you know, to me, it gets the job done. I don't believe you need any fancy USB cable to get better performance. Also comes with a USB-A to C, so depending on your devices that you're connecting it to, it's nice to have that flexibility. And then just to take that a step further, you also get a couple OTG cables. So you have a USB-C to C and a C to Lightning, and this did work on my older iPhone. I have a 14 Pro Max. Worked no problem there. Basically, it ignores the host volume of your phone, and then you rely off the amp settings to adjust your volume for whatever IM or headphone you're listening to. It also comes with a USB-A to C adapter. This little plug will convert an A to a C port. So I never really had a use for this because it came with all the cables I needed anyway, but frankly, I'm not going to get upset at having an extra adapter in the box. You get a short 3.5 millimeter analog cable, so if you just want to run it as an analog deck, you can do that. You can actually see on the back you have balanced, and you even have a SPDIF or SPDIF input. So this little adapter will plug in. This is also included and give you an optical, traditional optical out, and this supports coax as well if you wanted to buy the adapter online. The other thing that's worthy to note, so this has a 6.3 or a 1/4 inch adapter and a 4.4 output. Included in the box is this adapter to step it down to a 3.5. So it's a rather slick one. You don't have to use this. It's kind of different. As far as how I used mine, I just used a more traditional 1/4 inch adapter, and it worked just fine there. So again, it comes with things that you may or may not need. It does come with this really unique carry case, which funny enough, if you are the fanny pack type, this little slot right here, you can see that like you could run your belt through it technically, and then there is an opening, so as long as your belt's not too big, you can technically wear this. You also have this little hook. You can see on both sides there's like a little black buckle that sticks out. So if I unzip this, white zipper by the way, it's kind of an interesting color combination because you have black, white, and gray. So, you know, interesting choice. This is the carry case for the Diablo 2 though. Now this is the strap I was talking about earlier, so you can clip that on in case you just want to hold it or hang it onto something. You can obviously run that through something else to clip it. The inside's kind of interesting the way it's laid out. So you can put the Diablo in here and protect it, which is nice because this is a big aluminum brick, and that over time anything that's big and metal will probably show some signs of wear. I did kind of change the layout to support it to lay like this, and then this is kind of like a Velcro cover for the side. You can put the feet in there or other cables such as your charge cable, whatever it may be, and then even stuff your IEMs on the lid. This to me made the most sense as far as layout goes. It comes with this, and this was kind of running this way earlier, but as far as once I actually put the DAC in, I didn't really know of the purpose of this. This is probably me just being a novice because it's not my unit. But the other thing I want to point out is once this is secured, it is a little more challenging to get to the volume knob. Now you can do this and adjust it from there. There also is a nice little slider. So if you look at the top of the unit, this little switch locks the volume. So depending on how you're using this, if this is being used as a Bluetooth DAC, because it does support Bluetooth, you can lock that in, and then when you stuff it in your bag, it's not going to adjust and turn up on you. It's a little bit harder to adjust, but there is a little cutout right here on both sides, so you can have cable pass through. That way you can kind of keep it safe on the go, but still have your headphone or IEM connected. Considering this is a flagship product that came out relatively recently, it does support the latest Bluetooth codecs, and it should at this price range at $1,300. So it supports Bluetooth 5.4, and as far as codecs goes, it does aptX lossless, aptX adaptive, LDAC, AAC, SBC, etc. So this isn't going to be the limitation as far as what your codecs are able to run. Obviously, with the newer chipsets from Qualcomm, when you get into aptX adaptive and all these others, it's not the same as aptX HD or aptX low latency. Some of those protocols, there's a little bit of a lack of compatibility, so keep that in mind and make sure that this protocol matches up exactly with what you're looking for. Looking at the chassis, you would think, especially when you have a metal enclosure in these slots, it's usually associated to just heat dissipation because this helps with keeping the temperatures down as it increases the ratio to what's hitting the air, basically using air as a passive cooling device. However, these bottom slots actually have multiple functions. It has 2 sets of feet, and just to show you how versatile this is, so you can basically slide this in and get a short foot. And if I just do them both real quick, I mean, you can see how easy this is. It's not like this is a time-consuming process. That's going to lift the unit off the ground, make it easier to interact with the volume knob, and frankly, makes it more stable thanks to the rubber feet. You can also use these feet on the sides as well. So if you want an even lower profile, just pull that out. I'm going to slide this over here. And that is effectively how low it sits, but it's also very stable as well if you want to go to the bigger feet. So again, it's you can see where this is going. I'm not going to go through every single configuration, but I am going to show you the highest configuration before we move on to everything else. So all I have to do is, again, just slide those in. You can see that thing's quite tall. It's going to be a little bit less stable when you do something like that, but you do have some flexibility. Looking at the front of the unit, I already mentioned the 1/4 inch output. You also have a 4.4 Penacon connection, which is great for certain products if that's the cable you're using. This isn't a fully balanced amp topology inside. It is designed to be single-ended, which is totally fine. This is more present, I guess, just for the connectivity support and for some people that look for a balanced plug. It's one of those cases where you don't need to go balanced, so don't buy that assuming you're going to get better sonic performance. If anything, from what I've observed, the single-ended output seems to work better for me. You also get an XMEM switch, which if you have an XMEMS IEM or audio product, use that switch because it puts the output at a positive voltage bias, which is designed to utilize or benefit from the transient performance that XMEMS drivers have. If you don't have XMEMS, just leave that switch off and move on. Looking at the gain, so you have normal, turbo, and nitro. Nitro is crazy high gain, like not to a point where it makes the amp noticeably more powerful. It makes the gain ramp up extremely sensitive. So if you have something that is a very high impedance with very low sensitivity, something that's difficult to drive, and you want a more responsive volume knob, that would be the case for nitro, I guess, in this case. But I've pretty much always used normal or turbo. I've never needed to go past that, even with some of my larger headphones. This volume knob is rather nice. It has a good weight to it. It's smooth. It's not clicky. Good resistance to it, and then I can actually slide this in. I mentioned the volume lock earlier, but it's a pretty nice little feature because if you are a set and forget person and you don't want to accidentally blast your ears, especially with the gain being as sensitive as it is, I like that you have that feature. Now there is a switch at the bottom, and that's called IE Match. It's designed to lower the gain sensitivity of the volume knob, and you select which output you are applying IE Match to. The middle setting means that it's off entirely. Now this has an extremely low output impedance, like less than half an ohm, and enabling it does increase the output impedance. I think Golden Sound said it was about 6 ohms. I wasn't able to validate that, but it does make a difference because it does change the frequency response of a couple of products I tested. Anytime you change the output impedance, there is a chance it will affect the frequency response of the product that is connected to it. It's more apparent with something like this kind of IEM. And just to put this in perspective, Critical has the Truth Air Red. It's a $50 IEM that uses a dual or a dynamic driver with BAs or balanced armatures. And because of the difference in impedance, he included a 10 ohm impedance adapter, which added several decibels of bass to the low end of the driver. So you can effectively think of this as, instead of a 10 ohm, it's a 6 ohm impedance adapter, and on that particular product would have resulted in a bass shelf. When I used that switch on my Kiwi Ear Orchestra Lite, didn't quite have the same impact on the bass, but it does change the frequency response just a little bit, and not just in the bass region. It actually affected upper frequencies as well, but it was extremely slight. I would have still preferred to leave it on simply because of the fact that I had a more usable gain knob as far as IEMs go. Sonically, it's better off, but if you need that sensitivity to be reduced, then you might need to put it on anyway. Now looking at the back of the unit, you have the Bluetooth button, which is how you activate pairing mode or enable the Bluetooth function. Pretty self-explanatory. A balanced output. Now this doesn't come with anything to convert the balanced output to a traditional analog. Decent ones online sell for about $45 to $50, and that'll give you a 4.4 connection to a dual RCA. It's really nice if you want to hook this up to an amplifier for speakers. This won't drive the speakers, but you can get a variable output and use this as a nice DAC to send to your amplifier. So I want to talk about the gain switch real quick because it's overly sensitive in my opinion. I never found a case where I needed to use past 50% of the volume knob unless I was in the normal gain mode, and that was on only certain headphones. For IEMs it was still too much, and because of the sensitivity of the pot, depending on how easy to drive your IEMs are, there was a very, very slight channel mismatch. It always favored my right. That would come on sooner, and that's just the byproduct of using a potentiometer like this. It's not that it's a bad product, it's just how it works. So the solution had been to use this switch to lower sensitivity to get rid of the channel imbalance at very, very low volumes. I seem to have a really good unit because my imbalance was only if I was just playing it enough to be audible, but not what I would typically listen to for my music enjoyment. I did take some measurements on my IEMs to see what the byproduct was of switching from balanced to non-balanced, and also using IE match versus not IE match, and how that affected not only the tonality but the general volume output. And it can vary quite a bit. It was always in a usable range of power even with the IE match on. However, with that whole impedance adapter thing earlier, I would kind of experiment to see what suits your use case the best. I do really like the looks of the unit though. It feels extremely well made. This is very important because when you're spending this much money, it's not just for the specs. You do want to feel like you own a premium product. The edges are a little bit on the sharper side. It's a perfect flat 90-degree cut on the metal, but it's not like a razor blade or anything. I can rub my finger on it and still be just fine. Obviously, looks are very subjective, and if this is the right looking device for you, they don't make the Diablo 2 in a different color, so hopefully you like red. So let's talk about audio performance, because this is arguably going to be the most important thing on the feature range. However, I can tell you this, a lot of times if you're getting just a good DAC or a decent headphone amp, sometimes it's the features, layout, and design that become the deciding factor. You would expect most tech these days to sound good enough to be neutral, provided it doesn't have any flaws. The Diablo has a unique sound signature that stands out, and usually with the Burr Brown DAC implementation, they tend to be slightly warmer and a little bit softer in the treble. They're fun, they can be musical, but they're not as clinical sounding as some of the AKM and ESS DACs I've reviewed in the past. Now, that doesn't always determine the sound signature. It's the implementation of the DAC and how the rest of the circuitry is. It's very apparent here because the Diablo 2 likes to play. It adds a shot of caffeine to everything you're listening to. So if you have a lazy, dark, laid-back sounding headphone that you're trying to breathe some life into, Diablo 2 is a great sound signature for that because it's kind of wake it up. If you have an overly resolving, bright headphone that you're trying to tone down or maybe soften a bit, well, aside from EQ, this DAC signature, the output of this amp, is not really going to complement that well unless you are still just craving as much of that energy and detail as possible. It's rather neutral overall. It's not boosting the bass, it's not coloring the sound, it just sounds more energetic. So I don't want to dive down the dark path of saying it transforms everything. It does have a very cohesive presentation. I had no issues with imaging or staging being affected or perceived staging, and I tested on a lot of stuff. This is the new ZMF Caldera closed. I tested on IMs, I tested on dynamics as well, and multiple Sennheiser products. So I gave it a huge range of testing, and it's not always the sound signature for me, but one thing that was apparent is it's very much in control of what it's doing and very eager to give you a fun and exciting sound profile. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, then it'll be great. Again, if you want something smoother and even more neutral or laid back, then maybe consider another option. In addition to the form factor and the price, because the gain is so sensitive, it was not as enjoyable for me for some of my IMs, especially something like this, because if I'm not really paying attention, I just kind of bump it. It is a very fast ramp up in volume. Like, it makes the gain wheel, honestly, like I only need a third of what this is capable of adjusting to for most of my easy to drive products. I only wanted that extra gain for, or the extra volume control on the low gain setting with harder to drive headphones. So in conclusion, the Diablo 2 is not going to be for everybody. And I'm not just talking about the budget purely, because at $1,300, that's far outside the reach of some people. Thankfully, iFi makes products under $100, even if that's, what you're constrained to. However, in this price range, there is a huge variety of competitor options and other stuff from iFi to consider as well. What makes the Diablo 2 special is factoring in all of this insane power output, the connectivity, the Bluetooth function, into something that can serve as an audiophile level home-based DAC amp, something that just sits on your desk or listening area, but then at the same time you don't want to buy a second solution to take with you because you still want that sonic performance on the go, and the Diablo 2 is kind of a unique performer in that regard to be able to do that. Yes, the volume sensitivity is a little extreme for me. I wish it was a little bit softer, and this form factor might be a little large to be truly portable. However, there are certainly going to be situations where this is a perfect use case for some people out there. It fits the bill, and at least on the performance side, it's living up to that expectation. And that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that after watching this video, you learned a little bit more about the Diablo 2, or hopefully if you were considering it, I helped to make your decision a little bit easier. If you liked what you see, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, because I'd love to see you in the next video. And with that being said, I'll see you next time. Bye.